What if the AI revolution in our classrooms isn't only about smarter algorithms, but about shaping who our children become? What if every recommendation, every prompt, every scored essay reshapes a student's identity, their confidence, imagination, and moral horizon? If we care about citizenship, justice, and human flourishing, this is not a technical conversation. It is the conversation of our time. Hello, I'm Dr. Elena Carruba. I study learning, leadership, and how systems either nourish or erode human potential. Today we ask, how do we design ethical AI pedagogy so our schools make citizens, not just efficient data processors? If you find this valuable, please like, subscribe, and share. We need this conversation in every staff room and policy table. Let's begin. 1. Why this matters. The hidden curriculum of algorithms. Ask yourself, what is being taught when an algorithm decides which problem set you get next? What values are encoded when software nudges a teenager toward rote practice rather than inquiry? The answer, a curriculum that is not neutral. It carries priorities: speed over depth, measurability over mind, efficiency over imagination. AI in education promises remarkable things: personalized practice, real-time feedback, scale. But promises are not guarantees. The same technology that scaffolds learning can also harden inequality. Data-hungry systems harvest student behaviors. Opaque models give different students different opportunities. Automated scoring may reward conformity and penalize creative risk. So the real question becomes, how do we put pedagogy before product? How do we ensure that ethical design, that is, designs that center human dignity, critical thinking, and social responsibility, becomes the default? 2. The current landscape. What teachers and universities are already seeing. Let's be clear about what's already in classrooms and lecture halls. Universities use adaptive tutors that personalize practice for mathematics and language learning. Lecturers employ auto-grading to manage huge cohorts. Admissions offices deploy algorithms to screen applicants, and learning management systems surface content to students based on engagement metrics. Each of these interventions changes the student experience. Example from higher education. Imagine a first-year module in a large public university where AI grades short answers for regular formative assessment. The advantage: students get rapid feedback and can iterate. The risk: over-reliance on surface markers, vocabulary density, sentence structure, rather than originality of reasoning. Another example: an honors seminar where an AI suggests readings based on prior preferences. A glorious time-saving tool, unless that algorithm narrows rather than broadens intellectual horizons. We must study not just the tools but the effects, who benefits, who is invisible, and what patterns of thought are rewarded. The answer: a curriculum that is not neutral. It carries priorities: speed over depth, measurability over mind, efficiency over imagination. 3. The ethical blind spots. I ask and then answer question: where do most well-intentioned AI deployments go wrong? A. 3 places: data, design, and governance. Data. Student data is intimate. It reveals learning difficulties, socioeconomic status, even mental health signals. If we hand raw behavioral traces to commercial platforms without consent or guardrails, we trade pupil dignity for analytics. Data, therefore, must be minimized, consented, and purpose-limited. Design. Many edtech products are optimized for engagement metrics: time on task, click-through, completion rates. Those metrics are useful but insufficient. Good pedagogy asks additional human questions. Does this foster curiosity? Does this build resilience? AI should be optimized for learning health, not only for completion. Governance. Who audits the algorithms? Who has the right to inspect training data and model behavior? If procurement is focused only on price and a glossy demo, schools invite brittle systems into the heart of learning. Instead, we need procurement that includes ethical audits, bias tests, and community oversight. That's the diagnosis. Now the remedy. 4. A moral curriculum for AI pedagogy. Principles if we redesign education with AI as a tool, not the architect. What principles should govern practice? I propose 5 interlocking principles, which I use in my workshops and in the frameworks in transformative approaches. Student agency first. Students co-design learning paths. AI suggests, but students choose and reflect. Agency is a habit you teach, not an outcome you measure. Transparency as classroom norm. Tools must explain, in student language, why a recommendation was made. If a reading list appears, show the factors, prior interest, diversity of sources, and why the algorithm included that piece. Equity by design. Models must be stress-tested for disparate impact. We give greater weight to models that close gaps, not ones that only amplify top performers. Ethical feedback loops. Every deployment includes an audit, data minimization check, bias diagnostic, and a student-facing appeal mechanism. If a student feels wrongly judged by an autograder, there must be an easy human review path. Pedagogy above product. Procurement uses a power matrix, EEQ, emotional ethical outcomes, AIQ, transparency, and explainability, SSQ, social and sustainable returns. If a product scores poorly on EEQ or SSQ, it doesn't deploy. These are not abstract ideals. They become operable clauses in procurement, syllabi, and staff development programs. 5. Practical classroom strategies for educators. If you are a teacher tomorrow, how do you act? Here are immediate practices I teach in my mind-making lab and train in higher education programs. A. Teach the tool, not only the task. Make a lesson about the algorithm itself. Show students how an adaptive tutor decides what to show next. Ask them to generate adversarial examples, inputs that break the system. This builds reflexivity and metacognition. B. Embed ethics into assignments. When students analyze sources, require them to trace algorithmic provenance. Why did the news aggregator surface that article? What biases might be embedded? Make ethical critique a graded competency. C. Swap the score for the story. Use AI to generate formative hints, but require a human narrative reflection. What did you struggle with and what will you do next? The instrument gives the data, the student gives the meaning. D. Peer tutorship amplified by AI. Pair students so AI suggests scaffolding prompts. Peers then choose which prompts to use. This keeps human mentorship central. E. Open data labs. Create sensor and dataset projects where students collect civic data, soundscapes, temperature, library footfall, analyze it, and design local interventions. This teaches numeracy, ethics, and stewardship simultaneously. These techniques make AI an object of study, a mirror for learning, not a replacement for judgment. If you're finding this helpful, alike helps other teachers find these practices. Thank you. 6. Higher education policy levers. How universities must respond. Universities are large ecosystems. Here are policy levers that must be activated. 1. Procurement reform. Universities should require ethical impact statements from vendors, independent audits of models, and equity covenants, e.g., vendor must demonstrate how product improves outcomes for marginalized groups. 2. Data trusts. Student data should sit in governed trusts with student representation. Access is controlled, auditable, and revocable. 3. Assessment redesign. Move from single high-stakes exams to portfolios, oral vivas, and project work, assessments that favor synthesis and judgment over regurgitation. 4. Staff CPD, continuous professional development. Mandatory training in AI literacy, bias, and pedagogical design for all faculty. Not one-off workshops, but career-long pathways with micro-credentials. 5. Research and partnership ethics boards. Any research using student data should be pre-registered and peer-reviewed. External tech partners should not have unilateral access to raw student data. These are not radical, they are responsible stewardship. If we fail to act, we cede education's moral architecture to engineers who may not be educators. 7. Preparing students for digital citizenship. Curriculum components. What skills must the modern learner leave school with? Beyond reading and numeracy, I recommend a symbiotic literacy, the competencies to live well with technology. A. Algorithmic literacy. Understanding how recommendation systems work, their metrics, and their limits. B. Metacognition and epistemic humility. Knowing how you come to know, recognizing uncertainty, evaluating sources. C. Ethical discernment. The capacity to judge technology's social effects and advocate for fairer designs. D. Collaborative sense-making. Working across difference, negotiating conflicting data and competing narratives. E. Creative production. Not just consuming AI artifacts, but producing them responsibly, art, analysis, civic projects. These become modules in a civic curriculum that universities and schools can adopt. And yes, they are teachable. I teach these in workshops. They form the backbone of my mind-making lab. 8. Case study. A mock redesign of a first-year module. Let me paint a small, concrete picture. Situation: a 400-student first year, critical inquiry, module used auto-grading and an adaptive reading list. Outcomes: pass rates improved, but dropouts in underrepresented cohorts stayed high. Redesign: replace a single midterm with a portfolio assessed by a rubric that includes criticality, voice, and ethical reflection. Use the adaptive tutor for low-stakes practice only, not for awarding grades. Introduce a weekly algorithm clinic, where students test the tutor with their own inputs and report anomalies. Require students to co-create a code of practice for data use in the module, voted on by the cohort. Publish module analytics openly, de-identified, so students and staff can see engagement and suggest improvements. Result: hypothetical, but grounded in practice. Engagement becomes deeper. Students take responsibility for design, inequities are flagged and addressed, instructors regain interpretive space. Implementation requires policy support, a modest redesign budget, and faculty coaching, all feasible. 9. The educator's inner work, EEQ, and leadership. This is where our triple engine matters. Teaching is not merely technique, it is moral formation. The skills of the teacher that matter most in an AI classroom are EEQ, emotional and ethical intelligence. Practice, vulnerability, listening, and modeling epistemic humility. In my training sessions, I ask senior lecturers to perform one small ritual. During each seminar, they must admit one thing they don't know. This small act models inquiry rather than performance. Leaders in universities must also practice sustainable intelligence, SSQ structuring work, so that staff are not chronically reactive and students are not mere throughput. Policy should protect time for inquiry, not just productivity metrics. 10. Governance frameworks. The short policy checklist for administrators. Here is a 3-page starter pack you can deploy this term. AI ethics clause in procurement. Require vendor disclosure of training data sources and bias tests. If they refuse, do not buy. Student data bill of rights. Right to know, right to correct, right to opt out, right to human review. Assessment diversification mandate. No more than 30% of final grade from purely automated scoring for any module without human moderation. Community Oversight Board. Students plus staff plus external ethicist plus local representative to review AI projects quarterly. Transparency Dashboard. Publicly accessible, de-identified dashboard showing where AI is deployed and for what educational purpose. These are practical, legally plausible, and politically defensible. They protect learners and give institutions moral authority. 11. What about inequality? The economics of access. We cannot ignore structural questions. Who funds the technology? Who owns the outcomes? And who benefits economically? Too often, low-resource schools adopt cheap platforms with extractive data practices. We must make equity a procurement criterion, offer discounts, open-source alternatives, and public funding for civic AI labs in deprived areas. This is where philanthropy, government, and universities must collaborate. If we design AI pedagogy that widens the gap, we have failed education. If we design it to close gaps, we have succeeded. 12. A teacher's checklist to use tomorrow before you next deploy an AI tool. Ask 5 brief questions. What student need does this meet? What data is collected and why? Who can inspect the model? How will students contest automated decisions? Does it amplify equity or risk widening gaps? If you can't answer those cleanly, pause the deployment. 13. The future we choose. Optimism with guardrails. Let me end with a forward view. Technology is not destiny, design is. We may build classrooms where AI tutors scaffold curiosity, where students learn to interrogate their own assumptions, where teachers reclaim time for rich mentorship, but only if we design with moral clarity. I am not here to oppose innovation. I am here to demand better design, designs that prioritize dignity, equity, and the flourishing of young minds. Ethical AI pedagogy is possible and practical. We have the tools, policy levers, curriculum models, and community power. 14. Where I can help. Trainings. Book and call to action if you want concrete support. I run an 8-week mind-making lab for educators and a leadership cohort for heads of department, practical, hands-on, with templates you can use the next week. My book Transformative Approaches. Local and global solutions for sustainable education challenges includes the full toolkit, procurement clauses, and curriculum modules. Links are in the description. If this conversation matters to you, do 3 simple things. Like the video, subscribe for weekly episodes that fuse pedagogy and policy, and leave 1 comment. What single change would you make in your classroom next week? So the real question becomes, how do we put pedagogy before product? We teach not to fill heads, but to enlarge possibilities. The question is not whether AI will change classrooms. It already has. The question is whether we will change AI to make it an ally of human dignity, curiosity, and justice. If we choose well, the next generation will not inherit our anxieties, but our capacity to think, feel, and act together. Thank you for listening. Join me in the mind-making lab. Let us design the futures we want our children to live in. Like, subscribe, share. See you in the next session. How do we ensure that ethical design, that is, designs that center human dignity, critical thinking and social responsibility, becomes the default?